We've got to wait for him to come.
Hey guys, welcome to Kuro's first live streaming Instagram video. We're very excited to have you guys on board, and thanks for joining in. Just waiting for my partner Shane Roger to join as well. And today we're going to be discussing property investment and how property investment can benefit you both in the long, short, and medium terms. So we'll also be able to take some of your questions, and we will be able to explain to you how some of Kuro Property Group's how some of our investments work, and also able to explain how all of that happens. Cool. So just to give you guys a bit of background about property investment, there's actually 4 ways you can actually earn property investment. One of those is through monthly cash flow. So monthly cash flow is basically the amount of money that you make from a property each and every month. So your cash flow is basically derived from the income minus the expenses and what we left over with at the end of the month. So often, you'll buy a property and you might be renting it out, and you might be renting it out for the same amount of rental income that you're bond. So it might seem like a great investment because you're covering your bond payment, but you also got to remember that there are other expenses that you have to take care of. Things like your levies if you stay in a section title, your municipal rates and taxes, and those sorts of things. So you've got to make sure that you take all of your expenses into account when you are running your monthly cash flow. But if you can come out positive with a profit each and every month, then that's one of the great ways to profit each month. Shane, do you want to add on into how monthly cash flow can benefit you in terms of a property investment?
Yeah, sorry, Matt. I just jumped in a bit late there. But pretty much, your cash flow is just there. That's passive. Ideally, you want to set it up that you don't have to necessarily work that hard for it. You should have the right system in place that you get deriving monthly income from it without necessarily putting any effort into it.
Yeah, fantastic. It's a passive asset that basically pays you each and every month. I'd like to discuss that a bit further on some of our investment details a bit later. We're also going to show you some of the photos of some of the projects that we've also done, and how that can benefit you. On to the next one about how property investment can benefit you guys. It can also be a great way to appreciate on the asset. So often, your property will increase in value each and every year, majority of the time, and at least over a longer period of, say 10 to 20 years. So that's one of the benefits of property, is that your general value does improve, year after year. So from that aspect, even if your cash flow is quite small on the property, but you buy a property in a really good area where the property values are likely to increase quite a bit over the next few years, then you can definitely benefit from that when you sell the property, or if you want to use the property as leverage to finance other property deals, which is a strategy we will talk about at a later point. Shane, would you like to add on to how your property can appreciate and benefit you as an owner in the long
run? Yeah, so definitely, capital appreciation is one of the major appreciations that you can get from it. A secondary way that you can do it is by adding value to the property. That's either, say, additional building construction to the property, refurbishing the property to a certain level of standard. Obviously, you don't want to overcapitalize the property. So just be cautious of that. Another way to add value to the property is either through converting the property to a different zoning, in which case you can subdivide the property. Now you have 2 portions of land rather than one. Second way would be to change it from res 1 to res 2 or 3 and actually do sort of development on that particular property. Again, nice ways of driving, good appreciation on your property.
Yeah, no, 100%, Shane. Thank you for that. The third way that you can derive an income of the property every month is through the actual tax benefits that you get from owning property. So remember, property is very much like a business. There's income, there's expenses, there's profits, and there's losses. So a fantastic way to benefit is through your actual tax return. So what happens is all of your income can be set off against your expenses. So essentially, you can deduct all of the expenses that your property incurs each and every month, and that can actually go against your tax return and help bring down your tax liability when you do your return. So that's another great benefit. Obviously, it's quite an advanced strategy, and you would probably want to consult with a tax consultant with regards to that. But it is one of the best known ways that you can benefit from. Shane, would you like to add anything onto that?
No, I think you touched on a good point there, and yeah, a lot of people need to know that property is not just one thing, and you're in full control really, and it's something that does take a huge benefit versus other sources of investment as well.
Definitely, guys, please feel free to ask questions. We want this to be as interesting as possible. So any of your questions, as soon as they pop up, and as soon as we have an opportunity to answer, we'll do. Just to recap for those that have joined now, we're talking about the ways to benefit from property and the ways to earn money off of property. There are four main ways. The first one being monthly cash flow, the second one being depreciation, the third one being your tax return. The next one after that would be that it's a hedge against inflation. So obviously, you get what we call CPI, which is consumer inflation. So, each and every year, your inflation either goes up or goes down. But the great thing about property is that you can really hedge against inflation in the sense that, should inflation rise up by 3 to 4%, you might be able to increase your rental on that property by 5% each year. So you actually 1% or 100 basis points above CPI, which is a fantastic way to hedge against rising expenses and interest rates, etc. So that's another great benefit of property investment, both in the short and long term. Shane, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so second to that, obviously, with your property increasing in value, that does help against inflation as well. Essentially, your house is obviously going to go up in value year on year in most cases. So again, hedging yourself as well.
Sure. Very good point, Shane. I see one of you is asking if there's a recording available. Yes, there will be a recording available, and it will go on to soon after we have completed the live stream. Another question here from Charlotte wants to know how long does it take to flip the property. We'll get to that now, Charlotte. I just want to finish up on the ways to earn money from investment, and then I'll take your question. So the last way that you can earn money from a property is through what we call depreciation. So a lot of people know that property does appreciate in value over time, but it also depreciates. That's another way that you can benefit on your tax returns, is that you can actually depreciate a lot of the costs and deduct a lot of the costs on renovations, maintenance, etc., to lower your tax liability. And that's another fantastic way that one can benefit. Shane, do you know of any other ways that you would benefit from property?
I think you summed it up quite well. I think probably the next step to go on to is how can people actually protect their, cash flow and income off their property during, times of crisis, especially such as COVID. Obviously it's something that we're all going through and struggling with. But, as an investor, like where do you go? What are your exit strategies, and how can you protect your cash flow that's going to come in? Because obviously you want to make sure that your cash flow is secured. So from my perspective, one could look at lease guarantees and certain insurance on every single rental income that you are getting in. Again, never overprice your rental. You actually want really good tenants in. Anything else that you can think of on that, Matt, on how to protect your actual income that's coming in?
Yeah, no, I think you summed it up quite well there, Shane. Would you like to take Charlotte's question? How long does it take to flip a property?
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte, for the question. Yeah, so there's a few different ways that you can look at doing it. It really depends how you structure the contract in flipping the property. One could, take on the property, purchase a property that may take, 3 to 4 months thereafterwards, depending on how long your renovations are, depending on the skill of your labourers and your contractors that are involved, depends on the output as well. So typically, if you do it a standard method where you purchase property, wait for it to transfer, then do a renovation, depending on the renovation, it could take, say, 2 weeks for a light refurb to 6 months in some cases for other people, followed by another 3 to 4 months on selling the property. So one could look at a potential, whole transfer period from the start to finish of about a year. In our cases, we're generally quite clever with the way we set it up, and we're quite speedily with our renovations. So we actually look at getting our renovations and the flipping of a property between 4 to 6 months. That's where we target ourselves.
Sure, and yeah, just to sum up for guys who are not familiar with the terminology, basically flipping a property is when you buy a property um, below market value, generally a distressed property, a property in need of repair, and you then fix that property up, and you then sell it again for profit. So that sort of property investment strategy does fit in with what we do here at Furrow. So I really hope that does answer your question, Charlotte. A question here. In current climate, do you see significant increases in building or refurbishment costs due to delay in material supply, etc.? Shane is the construction expert within our business, so I think this is a good question for you, Shane.
Just repeat the question there, Matt.
In the current climate, do you see significant increases in building or refurbishment costs due to a delay in material supplies, etc.?
So I definitely think, it's an important point. It's a great one. One really has to consider, are you importing products or are you using local? Obviously, you want to be pro-local. Especially in our own country, we want to be pro-SA. So we do focus on using, local materials that are readily available. And one can always make compromises in terms of what you do use. Not in terms of quality, but, if you have a preferred supplier, if that supplier can't supply you, that they should be available elsewhere. And I think it's important not to just rely on one source of supply or one contractor at all. You need to be dynamic in a way that things do change all the time, should you be ready for it. So again, at the same time, you might find cases, and not to be, disheartening or anything, but labor costs may come down during these types of periods as everyone's looking for work. So you can offset some of possibly your additional expenses in materials. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add on to that, Matt.
Yeah, I think in many ways it is challenging to build at this stage, but at the same time it's also a good time to build because when the building industry comes to when it slows down, you can generally bargain a lot better on materials and labor. So I definitely echo what Shane has said. Um, Antonio asks, would it be a good time to buy a property? I think I'll take this question. So my answer
Sure.
is that it's always a good time to buy a property. So it's never really a bad time to buy a property. You just have to understand the market. So markets go up, markets go down, but you just have to be adaptable. So what I mean by that is, make sure that, let's say, for example, in the current market that we're at, it's essentially a buyer's market. You as a buyer can really use that to your advantage. You can generally buy property for a much lower rate than you could should the market be a lot higher. And also remember that interest rates have dropped down significantly over the last month or so due to COVID. So we've actually had more than a 200 basis point drop of late. And the current prime interest rates are sitting at 7.75%. And they've never been lower in the last 20 years. So I would say this is a fantastic time to buy property. Even if the interest rates do climb up again slightly, you're still going to benefit from a fairly low rate. So definitely.
And how does the reduced rate benefit the end client or the purchaser, Matt?
So remember, generally with your bond linked to the prime interest rate, and you're given a specialized interest rate by your bank. So every time the SARB, which is the Reserve Bank, every time they drop the interest rate, then what will happen is that your bond installment will go down. So essentially, you're paying less for your property whenever this happens. Obviously, the same can happen should they raise the interest rate. They would obviously pay installment.
So yeah, so there's obviously some good pros and there's obviously some cautious cons as well, in the sense that one's affordability can go higher, they can put themselves in a better area that possibly they've never been able to afford before, but at the same time they must be cautious of, can they actually afford that? Should things say possibly return to where they were? So just a good hint and tip for those out there that just be cautious. But again, this is definitely a time to buy, and a lot of the time you do make a lot of savings that you'll recognize 20 years in time. Is buying at a lower price is going to be a far better end than buying at a higher price, even if your interest rate is 2%. But if you're able to save the 200,000 Rand initially, it does help out a lot in the long run.
No, definitely. And there's a question from Anna here asking how people can get involved in investing with us. Shane, do you maybe want to shed some light on that?
Yeah, so just with regards to Kura, so we obviously strive to, create an opportunity for as many people as possible to get inside the property industry and learn a little bit about property and gain some wealth from that. There's more than enough to go around. And so what we do is we offer an opportunity for investors to come on board, either invest through, a loan to Kuro for a specific property in question, or one could look at doing JVs with Kuro on our specific projects and getting sort of hands-on involved. It really depends up to the person and what their facility is like. What I would recommend though is if anyone is interested, go have a look at our website. That's kura.koza. Have a look at the investor section, and all your questions should be answered there. We do have quite a clued up section there with all the answers to every single property that we do have at the moment. As well as we've developed a thing where you can actually start to invest online with us. So there doesn't have to be any interaction if you don't want. Essentially, you can invest virtually through our website.
Awesome. Thanks, Shane. And just to update everyone that's just recently joined, we're discussing property investment and how people can go about investing in property. We've discussed the 5 ways that you can benefit from property investing. For those of you that have joined late, this will be on our YouTube today, so you can go back and look at the answers there. So yeah, please, we encourage you to ask questions to us. This is a very interactive stream, so please just post questions in the comments and we'll try and answer them as best as we can. I see there is another question here, Shane. There's a second bond issue after the renovation as proposed in the Western student model. So essentially, this person is referring to one of our property investment proposals that we've sent out. So I think it's a question with regards to refinancing, which a lot of people might not understand. Shane, do you maybe want to explain very basically, what a second bond or a refinance is, just so that everyone understands?
Sure. So it goes by a few names. Refinance is most likely the typical one that people go through, otherwise second bond. The purpose of it is to either withdraw additional capital on your property. So as an example, let's say you had a property and you have a bond of R1 million with the bank, but over the 10 years or over some increase in the value of the property through renovations or zoning changes, your value of the property is now 1.5 million. The bank is happy to loan based on that value. So one could look at, say, refinancing at 100% for 1.5 million, therefore withdrawing the 500,000 Rand that is within the value of the property. That gives people quite a few options. Hopefully you don't necessarily spend on luxurious goods, but as a means to grow your wealth. But I think that sums it up. Is there anything you want to add to that, Matt?
Yeah, I think that was a good explanation. So yeah, just to go back to the question at hand, essentially, you can use the refinance or the second bond to get all of your capital input back. And, it's a way to benefit infinitely from returns on the property going forward and well into the future. Shane, do you maybe want to discuss one of the deals we've done where we use the refinance model to our benefit?
Sure. Is there a particular one that you want to bring up? Maybe you can show some pictures on your side and then we can walk through it with the people. Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
not able to share pictures on my side.
oh, that's fine. I've also got limited access to my photos. But yeah, how about this one that's reflecting now, the Cooper project? Maybe discuss how that's going to work from an investment point of view. And if investors do want to get involved, how would the model work essentially?
Sure. Yeah, so the property is quite dilapidated, but that's what we enjoy to buy, and that's what we like. So our plan there is to go in there, raise the funds for the particular property, and as you can see, we are about 80% of our capacity. So we'll go in there, we'll renovate the property. We're essentially purchasing property at 750,000 rand, 850, sorry, each. We'll be spending the money on refurbishing that property. Then the bank is going to come after we've got the loan for it. They're going to come, they're going to review the property, look at all the renovations we have done. Have we increased the value of the property? And they'll most likely say yes. To what extent, we'll figure out at the end. We do plan on refinancing each property out at about 1.6 to 1.8 million. The purpose of that is to withdraw all our capital out of the property to finance back the investors so they get their good return on their monies. Generally, we give about 17.5% return on their money, and that'll typically take between 9 to 12 months, depending on the bank during this time period. But that's the plan of action that we do have going on there.
Yeah, so just to add to that, this is a property that we are keeping for rental purposes. So we will be able to, use the property and leverage against it in order to raise the necessary bond finance that we need and, be able to back our investment. So that is just one of the many strategies we also use here at Kuro. I previously mentioned how we flip properties. We also, create rentals out of some of our properties, which we call multi-lets or buy-to-lets. And we also look into residential developments as well. Should we maybe talk about some of the flips that we've done, Shane, and maybe just touch on that? Again, guys, please feel free to ask any questions as we go along. How about this flip here, Shane? This one we did in Blegari. Explain from a high end how we did that.
Sure. So actually, that was our first ever deal. That's soon after Matt and I met. We went out and about looking for properties, and we came across this one dilapidated property where we spoke to the owner, a lovely old lady, but she was not in the position to maintain a place like that, and she wanted to move on, and she actually wanted to spend time with her mother, which is great. So what we did there is we ended up purchasing a property with her. It actually took about, what was it, Matt? 10 months to actually conclude on the actual deal. But once we were through the door, once we started renovations, we were through the property in about 4.5 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. And we spent about 700,000 Rand on renovating that property and getting up to a spec that we were quite happy with. And there were some challenges in that property. The pool was one of them, certain unforeseens, but it's something that you do deal with when you do go through property renovations and flipping a property. There's certain things that you'll never see, and you only figure them out later on. So after that, what we did is we ended up selling the property, and the person who actually bought the property in the end, as soon as we're done with renovations, they put down an offer to purchase on the property, of which we accepted, and yeah, the process went smoothly. Yeah?
Excellent. Yeah, this is one of the ways that you can go about your property investment. You can make a good profit in a fairly good amount of time, but obviously, again, you need to look for properties for low market value, properties that you can add value to, and also be mindful, during this difficult seller's market. So when you are selling a property again, try not to price it too high, otherwise you might, price yourself out the market. So it's a very difficult thing to balance. You need to buy right, but you also need to sell right as well. I think there's another question here, which I'm happy to take. How successful are you in raising a bond at this time? What gives you an advantage in getting the bond? I think that's a very good question, and it's very specific to our current situation regarding COVID. So yes, I mean, banks are still lending. Banks still want to bonds to the owners. But yeah, they are going to be a lot stricter on their criteria going forward. They might ask for a bigger deposit. They might not necessarily want to give out 100% bonds at this stage, obviously because of a lot of uncertainty. But they will definitely look at lending. So I think that it really depends on your usual factors, affordability, the actual property itself, how well it's valued. So the bank will always take those things into consideration. And if you can still prove affordability, and you can still show them a way that you're able to pay that bond each and every month, then they'll definitely look at lending to you. So the way we help ourselves in getting a bond on our properties is we use the rental income to boost our affordability. So when we rent out our properties, that's an additional source of income over and above our ordinary income that we earn from working, etc. So that's another good way of raising your affordability with a bank, is by providing them with your lease agreements that you have with tenants and showing them what you can afford based on the rental income that you're getting each and every month. So that's something that I would recommend.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, Matt, is, considering the question was asked, as Kura as a whole, so we've developed some relationships with people with inside the bank, and those days aren't gone where personal relationship doesn't go a little bit further, and that does assist us when raising finance for a particular property.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think very, very good point. Again, it's also about just staying positive and just planning all in this chat. So we've only got a couple of minutes left of this live stream. We just want to thank you guys for tuning in again. We really do appreciate it. And if there are any last minute questions, we are more than willing to take them. Just bear in mind that we will be posting this on our YouTube page, and it will be able to be viewed again on Instagram. So if you did miss the beginning, then please, this will still be available. And we are going to run these weekly, so there will be other topics to come up in the future. I see there's another question here from Noah. How's the situation looking at the moment on the multi-let on Boundary Road? So for those that are unsure, Boundary Road is one of our current investment opportunities at the moment. So that is still open to investors. Anyone who does want to invest in that property, we'll try and post the link here on the comments. Otherwise, you'll be able to find more information on the website. But it is available at the moment for investment purposes. Question from Anna. What amount on average do people invest with you guys? So generally it ranges anywhere from 20,000 Rand upwards. We have two options on our investment packages. We have the starter package, which is for investors that want to invest and earn a return on their money. Our returns average anywhere between 15 and 20% per annum. And we also have a jackpot option, which allows investors to joint venture with us on a specific project, so that we're willing to put up the full capital on the property, and that allows them to share in the profits or rental income depending on the strategy used on the property. Shane, would you like to add anything to Anna's question?
No, I don't think there's anything else to add to the question. I think, if people have specific questions that they want to know about the property in question, we do have a FAQ inside our models. So if there's anything that's there that's not answered for you, we'd love to hear it because it just helps us grow and help educate as many people as possible. So we do say, listen, send us a message, a DM or anything like that, and we're happy to answer any question that you may have. And possibly, the next time we do a live stream video, we can answer any questions that we've left out.
Awesome. Thank you, Shane. I just want to thank everyone for tuning in. I'm happy we were able to answer everybody's questions. Please let us know and give us some feedback on how you think it went. It was our first time doing this, so hopefully we can only get better. But yeah, let us know what topics you want to hear about. We aim to do this